Okay, greetings from the county line. You know, this month we're trying to figure out what it means when you see an old guy in the mall or in the grocery and he's like an old guy like me wearing a veteran's hat and you thank him for his service. Because we've noticed that since 1973, when the draft was abolished, that there's been a creeping divide between American citizens and the men and women who wear the uniform of our armed forces and defend our, well, not just ours, but basically freedom and liberty around the world. So I wanted to try and acquaint you this month with some of the people that make up our armed forces, and today I have the honor of talking with Staff Sergeant Carvalho and Staff Sergeant Sean Tanner, both of the United States Air Force. Thanks for joining me today, guys. I appreciate it. Let's start with you, Sergeant Carvalho. What's your story? Why are you in the Air Force?
Well, that's a great question. Well, originally I started because I felt like I wanted to give back, play an important part in creating a legacy for my future family. My grandfather was in the Army, and he was a big part of the reason why I felt like I wanted to carry that torch forward. But my granddad, having been wounded in the Korean War, he ended up working for the Air Force as a civilian for about 20 plus years. And over that course of time, he was, I guess, enamored by what the Air Force had to offer. And although I was pretty close to going into the Marines, I had 3 cousins in the Navy, a couple cousins from Hawaii who are also in the Army, and a couple Marines. I always just thought that the Marines was the way I was going to go, but my grandfather ended up kind of instilling a little bit of that Air Force culture into me and asked me to go speak to an Air Force recruiter. And I guess it was all history from there.
So you're kind of from a military family.
To a degree.
It's a bit of a legacy.
It skipped a generation.
Okay.
My dad was a little bit of a hippie, if you will. It still kind of is. He's a trucker now. But yeah, my granddad, he had me going to all types of ceremonies growing up. He was a part of the Purple Heart Association. He was a commander of the Purple Heart Association as well. So just being around the military in general, and then having cousins that were also in the military, I just knew I was going to end up serving. I just didn't really know that it was going to be the Air Force.
Sergeant Tanner, where are you from? How did you get here wearing blue?
Okay, so I joined when I was 22. I had a father who was in the Navy, and he was always a proponent of service and using benefits from the military. So he put that into me early, and I was reluctant up until I had a taste of life, and I said, you know what, that might be the way to go. So I visited all the recruiters, and I was about to go Navy, honestly. I was about a week away, and then the Air Force recruiter finally called me back, and I had that conversation, and it seemed like it fit me a little bit more. And then we kind of went off and running, and here we are 13 years later. So it was about service and utilizing those benefits to ensure the next generation had a much better opportunity than I did. I didn't come from a bad background, but it could always be better. So that was my goal.
You saw the military as a way to kind of improve your life, and
most definitely. I saw
tremendous opportunity there.
I saw a lack of discipline and a whole bunch of other things that I knew the military could help me fill. Plus, there's things like the GI Bill and home owning and all those different kinds of things that come along with service as well.
What's it like to be part of the most powerful Air Force in the world?
I think it's a bragging point. I'm super proud every day. I've been proud of my service since jump. Everybody I see in the Air Force, I congratulate on their service, thank them for their service, and I feel the same way about what I'm doing.
Did you ever have one of those aha moments where you thought, man, this is really bigger than me, and I'm proud to be part of it?
I handful of times. I mean, I have my little moments here and there, especially as a recruiter, because you're selling, you know, what it is that we provide, and we talk about it every day. So it does get a little bit watered down at times, but there have been deployments where I participated in different missions, been part of the support for some very eventful moments in time where I felt like, wow, I was there. I didn't really soak it all in because I was just so focused on the mission and getting things done. But looking back, I do feel like I had a big part of something, maybe a small part of something bigger. But historically, I feel like I had a contribution there, which is great. You know, something
Sure.
that I get to keep for me for the rest of my life.
What's it like to be in the Air Force? What would a normal day look like?
Oof.
I can give it from operational perspective. You can give it from the recruiter perspective.
Sure, I'll give a little bit of both.
Okay, so my particular career field was fuels. They had 3 different shifts: a day shift, an overnight shift, and then a mid shift. You would show up to work. I was an accountant, so I'd look over what the previous shift I did. We'd have pass on. We would work on making sure everything was current for the very last shift. You had to close out the account. We would be calling in the drivers to go do runs to fuel the aircraft, defuel them, whatever that operation might be. That would go on for about 8 hours, and then at the end of the day, we do pass on with the next shift. Then after that, it's pretty much going home and being a dad for me or whatever else the other airman might be doing after that, and then we repeat the same thing Monday through Friday.
That's a tough job.
It can be.
I don't know what it's like today, but in the 70s, it was hauling those heavy hoses around on a flight line while the wind's blowing 40 miles an hour and it's freezing cold, and your hand, you know, you had to take your gloves off and you smelled like jet fuel all the time. And
Right. I think you get so used to it. Okay, so we do those things, and that has not changed, but you just get used to it. That's about it. So it is those things. But it's well worth it. You get to see every airframe in the Air
Sure.
Force. You travel, you can go to every base. You can deploy, you will deploy because they need those services. So it's hard, but it's worth it. Definitely worth it.
Yeah, one thing I would note is that even though you did bring up some good points, that there are going to be some challenging moments. It's those challenging moments that give you the sense of pride, because it's not easy. And if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. But with that being said, you also gain the rest. So it's like, you know, that saying, you can't have your cake and eat it too. I think that's how it goes. But in this regard, you kind of do, because even though it is hard work, you know, you get to take that. You have that sense of pride, and you get to take that with you for the rest of your life, because you know that you contributed something that very few people get the opportunity to do.
oh, sure.
And yeah, in the Air Force, you got to realize that only roughly about 5% of the Air Force is in a flying job. So 95% of us are not. So we're all in some type of support role to the mission, which is, you know, we have a flying mission. We have other missions as well, but a lot of people just assume because it says Air Force, we're all pilots, or we're all flying around. That is definitely not true. We also have medical staff. We have every type of support role that you can think of that supports a small city, because every Air Force base has all types of facilities, and someone's got to, you know, do those jobs.
You could literally just close the front gates and be a self-sustaining community.
Definitely, we have to be able to do that, obviously for security reasons. But no matter where we are in the world, we've got to take care of each other, and everyone has a job. So, if somebody was considering this as an option, they should definitely start researching it, because it's one thing to kind of go at it from a general approach. It's like, I want to join the military, or I want to join the Air Force because I like planes. Like, you should probably take a little bit more time and create a list of, like, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. Take an ASVAB, so that way you can see where your aptitude lies.
What is an ASVAB?
So an ASVAB is an aptitude test. It's basically going to test your skills, like where you're at. It's very similar to an SAT or ACT, and it's going to be scored out of 99 points. So 99 points is the highest that you can get. Now, if you wanted to take a practice test to see where you're at, all you have to do is contact an Air Force recruiter. and we'll be happy to have you do that. It only takes about 15 to 20 minutes, just to see if you have the aptitude to serve in the Air Force, or any other branch for that matter. It's the same test across the board. With that being said, the Air Force does have a minimum score requirement, which is a 31. So if you wanted to know more about that, I would get with an Air Force recruiter because there's a lot of details and how that works. But every single job in the Air Force requires a different ASVAB score.
Well, let's break that down a little bit, because that's interesting that you'd bring the ASVAB test up. Somebody walks in here and they say, I want to be a plumber, and you guys say to him, we'll see how well you do on the plumbing test or whatever.
The ASVAB test.
The ASVAB
It's for
test.
every job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it comes back and says, no, we think this guy'd make a really good electrician or a really good truck mechanic or something else.
Right.
If you don't mind, so I'll give
No,
you...
I don't mind.
Okay, I'll give you what I give the applicants or whoever they are when they come in. Jobs are based off two things, qualification and availability. If you're qualified for it and it's available, you'll get it. There is no place you can walk in and get your dream job without being qualified for it, right? There's a need that the Air Force has at the moment. If we need that job and you qualify for it based off your ASVAB and your medical qualifications, it's yours. If you do not qualify for it, or we do not feel like you'd be a best fit off of your test scores and medical qualifications, we can't make up something for you, but we do have opportunities that we need that you might fit. So if somebody were to come in and say they wanted a specific job, I would say let's see if you're certified for it. Let's see if we have a way for you to qualify for it outside of your ASVAB and medical, because we don't know what that is as recruiters. Our job is to qualify you. So I will qualify you, and then we'll see what you qualify for with the Air Force. Now, if someone were to come in with, for example, a CompTIA Security Plus cyber certification, that might help you get a cyber job because you are certified in it and you're doing it.
Definitely.
But if you're not qualified for it, through color vision, depth perception, a myriad of other tests, then we can't give you that job.
It can definitely help. It's not going to give you 100% accuracy, as in like just because you have a certification, it could really help. I've seen it happen. I've done it, but it's not a guarantee. Mm-hmm. So having experience and the certification is probably going to guarantee you that opportunity. So
And for somebody who really doesn't know, excuse me, what it is they want to learn to do for a living, the ASVAB test would be very helpful.
it was designed for that purpose. So the ASVAB is not just for the military. If you wanted to learn more about it, go to asvabprogram.com. That's
Well, there's a website.
Yeah, asvabprogram.com. That's the website for the ASVAB. It has no, I guess the military has no jurisdiction over it. We don't have control over the ASVAB. The ASVAB is an aptitude test to see what your strengths are. So that way you can discover and figure out what it is that you really ought to be doing. So it's a blanket test that you can just literally take and see where are your strengths. Because you might think, or maybe your dad thinks, you should be a lawyer. But in reality, you should probably be an electrician.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to look at that test and say, okay, well, here's an inside view into my brain. Not only that, but like I can use that as a pros and cons list for, hey, well, I really thought like I could be a welder, but really I'm looking more like an electrician because, you know, my brain is geared that way. Or maybe a mechanic. Or maybe a paralegal. If you go to airforce.com, you can see all the different career fields that we have. We have
How many are there?
over 130 enlisted career fields. Now there's obviously the officer side of the house as well. So it's a myriad of jobs, all different types. And the ASVAB is what's going to allow you to do specific jobs.
What a great opportunity. Now, last week, Curtis and I were talking with the Army recruiters, and they mentioned that there's a huge, tremendous college incentive. In fact, one of those guys was taking full advantage of it. It has like 9 hours to go to finish his undergraduate degree. Does the Air Force have the same deal?
Well, actually, we're like the most educated of all the branches.
Hey, now.
Yeah, no, really, we are. Fact check it. So the Air Force has a community college to the Air Force. It's kind of built in. CCAF is what you're going to hear a lot of Air Force guys saying, "Oh, I got my CCAF degree." It's an associate's degree, so it's an accredited college program. You get college credit for basic training because there is going to be some classroom parts of basic training where you're going to have to sit down and learn. So you're going to be learning from somebody who's certified to instruct college level courses. So you're going to get college credit for that. Now, how is that any different from the other branches? The other branches have similar classes, but it's not going to go directly through.
They don't have their own college.
They don't have their own. Well, yeah, that's correct. They don't have their own regionally accredited college. The Air Force has had it forever. With that being said, everyone's getting college credit from basic training. Everyone's getting college credit from tech school, which is where you learn how to do your job at the very basic level. But you're going to have the majority of your associate's degree already done. In order to secure that associate's degree, you have to finish your degree. So there's going to be additional classes. Typically, it's about 15 more school hours, so credit hours, and that you can get done at the education center on base because the Air Force has education centers. Or you can go to any online school of your choice. You can go to a university. Wherever you can get accepted into, that's a regionally accredited college, so you can get some classes done. Once you finish the requirements for that, you're awarded your Community College of the Air Force degree. So it's very reasonable to get done at a very quick pace, depending on how long your tech school is. It depends on how long your training is. But it's not unheard of to get your Community College of the Air Force degree within the first 2 years, 18 months to 2 years of being in the Air Force. So while you're earning an income, you're also working towards your college degree. You get your associate's degree through the Community College of the Air Force, and you can take that and apply that to whatever undergrad degree that you would like to do. So if you wanted to continue your education, you can go ahead and do that.
That's quite an incentive,
Yeah.
considering the cost of college nowadays.
Well, yeah, and we would pay for it. So, like, after you get to your first duty location, you would have to talk to your supervisor about this because if you're not performing at work, they're not going to approve tuition assistance. But if you're performing well at work, they'll approve you to go ahead and take classes, and it's part of our culture in the Air Force. No one's going to tell you no. No one's going to tell you, get back to work. They want you to take classes because if you're taking classes and I'm your supervisor, that makes me look good. So, of course, they want you to take classes. And it means that, you're trying to sharpen yourself. You're trying to develop yourself. They really want you to take classes that are going to kind of somehow make its way back into your, whole person concept. So, like, if you're going to school for a business degree, how is that business degree going to forward the Air Force, right? How is it going to make your job better? How are you going to help develop others? How are you going to bring this into the fold? So that's really what they want.
So that whole person concept. And then also, I don't know if you've had experience with this. I started as a fuel truck driver. That's your baseline job. Once you've proven yourself capable, they'll give you advanced SEIs or special experience identifiers, and mine was accounting. So that accounting school, those credits actually went towards a CCAF as
Right.
well. So at different points in your career, you'll get different credits. It's not just basic training and technical school. It happens quite often, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And then that all factors into your degree, like you said, and that's your Community College of the Air Force degree, the AUABC program, which is your Community College of the Air Force degree becomes exactly 2 years.
Can you say
of a
that one more
4-year
time?
degree. The AUABC program.
AUABC.
You people with your acronyms.
Well, you look it up.
It's a lot.
Google it.
It's
It's
a
really
lot.
important because you
I
can
can't even
take that-
remember all those letters.
Well,
But yeah,
you can play
okay.
it back. The AUABC program. But basically,
Right.
you're going to be able
Right.
to take that associate's degree with the CCAF and directly apply it towards your bachelor's degree.
Exactly.
Now, you don't necessarily have to go that route, but that's like the quickest, fastest route. I ended up getting a Community College of the Air Force degree after I got my bachelor's because I was more focused on getting a business degree. It just so happened to cover the same exact requirements for the Community College of the Air Force degree. So I was able to do both, but I was really just gunning to get my bachelor's. I started a little bit later. I decided to have some kids and,
Life
make things
gets
a
in
little
the
bit more
way.
complicated.
Sure.
And then I decided, I'm going to go for it because that's why I joined the Air Force. It was part of the reason. I ended up going to school for a year before I joined the Air Force. I ended up nixing that plan, joining the Air Force, and I said, I'm going to get this done before I get out. I'm at my 13-year mark as well, and I didn't get my bachelor's degree until last year. So, word to the wise, You can do it a lot sooner. You just got to make the decision and stick to it.
Now, does that make you eligible for officer candidate school?
Commissioning, it does to a certain degree. So the Air Force, along with what I believe most branches, you have to have a very competitive GPA. So in the Air Force, I think it's pretty common or well known that if you want to commission using a bachelor's degree, you would go through officer training school, OTS for short. But the most common GPA is about a 3.7. It's not saying that if you don't have one, you couldn't do it, because you can definitely be selected for OTS without the 3.7 or higher. But they're going to be looking for other identifiers to show that you have what it takes. But 3.7 is a pretty good average for GPA, which I still happen to have.
Yeah,
So
I'm impressed.
I have that, so I mean, who knows? But there's other things as well. So there's every year we have an annual review. So an annual review, they're going to go through all of your experience for the year, what you've done, and then they're going to rack and stack you and all of your counterparts to see who is the highest performer. And then they're going to rate you. So every year you're going to get a rating. So when you apply for OTS, they look at all those records to see what kind of performer you are in the workplace, right? And then they're also going to look at what you're doing in your community. So it's not just the GPA, it's not just the annual reviews, but it's also what's your community involvement like? Are you a leader? Do you take care of people? They want to see what kind of person you are all around. In addition to that, depending on the job, there's an AFOQT, which is the Air Force's officer test to see how you, it's similar to a SAT, if you will, but there's a little bit more in there that's Air Force related. So you can study for that if you really wanted to. If you wanted to go and commission into the Air Force as an officer, you would have to probably purchase a book or look online to see if you can find it, but AFOQT is the acronym.
Well, we're about out of time, but I do want to talk about officers a little bit because, you think of the Air Force, you think about flying, and how does one become an Air Force aircrew member or pilot?
A pilot in the Air Force. Do you happen to know? Because I know a little bit.
Not this specific
So
qualification.
as Air Force recruiters, we're enlisted accessions recruiters.
Right.
Our expertise is enlisted career fields, right?
Okay.
With that being said, I happen to have had some friends, or I guess you can say old coworkers, who were gunning for that. I had a buddy who was in maintenance, turning wrenches, working on C-17s. All the while, I didn't know this, but he was working towards getting his bachelor's degree. So he had his bachelor's degree, but he was also working on his private pilot's license. So the bachelor's degree, the private pilot's license, and then he also took the AFOQT test, and he scored pretty high.
Which made him a pretty attractive candidate.
High GPA, the private license, the private pilot's license, coupled with a good AFOQT, he got selected right away. Not only that, but he was also like the NCOIC of the section. He was a leader, like we had talked about. There's a lot of things that they look at. He was also heavily involved in his church and his community. He was doing a lot of things.
Just the kind of stuff you'd do if you want to get accepted to a good college.
I think he just did it because he just all around wanted to. I would have never assumed like he was doing this for any other reason. Just
Okay,
because that's
just
who he was.
one of those overachievers.
Yeah, I guess you could say he was an overachiever, just an achiever, just shooting for the stars. I think there's a lot of people like that in the Air Force. People that they make it look like it's easy, but they're doing everything.
If you can, 1 second. So if we approach that from a different perspective, that might be good, maybe for high school students, because I don't know if you do, I get quite a few high school students that come in and they want to be pilots.
Oh, it happens all the time.
So for them, there's a couple different ways, right? You can go through the Air Force Academy, which is an option. You would probably have to start that a little bit early in your academic career because it's extremely competitive. There's Air Force ROTC detachments at universities and crosstown schools that partner with them.
That's AFROTC.com.
AFROTC.com. There are You can enlist in any job in the Air Force, get your degree through those benefits y'all spoke about, and then commission into being a pilot if that's a possibility. And then you can get a private pilot's license, and there is, and I don't want to quote programs because they change all the time, but there are a few slots for enlisted pilots. It was a pilot program for drone pilots. That might be a possibility from the enlisted side, but it changes every year with different things. So those are the ways they could do it from high school.
You jogged my
into doing
memory
that.
too.
What you
There's
got?
one more.
What you got?
So, the Air Force has a program called SOAR, SOAR. A lot of acronyms. I
Yeah.
feel like we're gonna get made fun of.
I'll have to play it back.
SOAR. So the SOAR program is to recognize outstanding airmen who are working on their degree. But basically, you finish about half of your associate's degree. You have a competitive GPA, kind of like similar to the commissioning thing. But they take you out of active duty, and then they put you in an Air Force ROTC detachment. So you'd have to get accepted into the university first to get to apply for this program. But once you're accepted into, like, Notre Dame, for instance, has an Air Force ROTC. With that acceptance letter coupled with your GPA, and you put your package together, if they select you for SOAR, you just get taken out of enlisted, active duty enlisted, and you go to school full time. That's it. And you get paid as a staff sergeant to do so. So they pay for your housing, they pay for your food, they give you an income, and you finish out your degree, and you're in the Air Force ROTC. And then after that, obviously if you're a performer, you have
They
to
pay your tuition as well?
Everything.
At Notre Dame University?
everything. And then after that, you get a commission, and you, I don't know if you know about, being a commissioned officer in the Air Force, but it's pretty dang good.
One final question. Are there still aircrew positions available to enlisted personnel?
Oh yeah.
What are they, and how would, I mean, if somebody came in and said, I want to be a pilot, no, you're not going to be a pilot. Well, what else? What can I do? What would your answer be?
Oh man, that's a tough one.
I always revert back to the qualification and availability. We have jobs available. Are you qualified? Let's find out. Let's get that practice ASVAB. Let's see what your medical qualifications are, because once that happens, you actually get a job list based off those two things. And we ask that you list a certain amount of those jobs from that list that, based on your qualifications and ASVAB score, we feel you would be successful in, and you will get one of those from the Air Force.
Can I keep it 100% real?
Keep it real, man.
keep it
Yeah,
real. So the Air Force has a program called the Ambassador Program. Now, you're going to hear this from other branches. They're gonna tell you, oh, the Air Force, you're going to have to fill up a list. You're going to have to put all your top preferences, but then they're just going to pick the job. They're going to pick the job for you. You're not going to get the job you want. That's not necessarily true. It's just because it's so competitive. So you got to fill up your top choices, and the Air Force has to fill jobs. So we can't just allow you to just put, I only want to be a load master. I want to fly, and that's it. It's like, okay, well, according to our policy, we can't do that because we don't have enough of those jobs. So we can't guarantee you that. You could be sitting here for 2 years, 3 years until a job opens up. We don't want that. We'd rather just not. You could just go somewhere else. I'm sorry, but we can't do that. It's not good for business, right? So what happens is they created the Ambassador Program. So the Ambassador Program is for juniors and seniors, okay? You have to be at least 17 and have parents' consent to join the Air Force. But if you were to qualify for the Air Force, so you've taken an ASVAB, you've done your physical, you enter into the delayed entry program, and you're still in high school. You're not going to basic training until after you graduate high school. But those jobs, those premium jobs that are hard to get, the unicorns, if you will, those jobs, they put a select reserve amount of those jobs into the Ambassador Program. So ambassadors are the ones that are scoring. So if you're in high school right now, and I didn't know about this when I was in high school, this thing's been around for ages, okay? This is nothing new. If you want to do one of those cool jobs, like you said, I want to fly, I want to be an enlisted flyer, I want to go out there and do something where I'm going to travel around the world, and you're in high school, you might want to listen up, because now's the time. If you're going to do it, commit now, so you're the one who's going to be rewarded. Now, if you wanted to fly and you wanted to do something like that, and you're a graduate, it's not impossible to get those jobs. Just don't bet all your money on it. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, we got to wrap this up. All right, Sergeant Cavallo, thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Sergeant Tanner, I appreciate you taking the time. Ladies and gentlemen, two of America's finest. God bless you. And God bless you. Merry Christmas,
Merry Christmas.
everybody. We'll see you next week.